came to an abrupt end when the Italian government found that, shall we say, there were some irregularities in your paperwork.
That's the reason they gave, yes, but I assure you my papers were in perfect order. You see...
But, no, they shut you down and they confiscated your work, citing, let me see here, failure to report human remains and unapproved excavation methods.
No, that's not true. We had no intention of...
Then what exactly was your purpose on the island, Doctor? If it wasn't to give... Well, if it wasn't grave robbing, as some have accused, I mean, they revoked your dig licenses. Surely that has some serious implications.
My purpose is... How do I put this? Poveglia is a modern-age Eden, the likes we've never seen.
I don't recall insane asylums or infectious disease in the Garden of Eden, Doctor, at least not in the version of the Bible that I've read.
While it is true that the island has been used as a dumping ground of disease and pestilence since the early Napoleonic Wars, what has grown from this rotted fruit is nothing short of miraculous.
How so?
Imagine, if you will, the worst strain of tuberculosis or even the most treatment-resistant form of influenza. While modern medicine has grown by leaps and bounds and these things are no longer the threat that they once were, at one time they were a very real problem. And a nightmare to deal with. Whenever an illness, disease, or even plague mutated beyond what could be considered normal, those who were inflicted were sent to Poveglia for study.
But they weren't being studied, were they? In your book, what is it that you call it? Ignorant containment.
These people were sent to hospitals and asylums on the island, not for treatment or medical experimentation, but for something far worse, simple housing. The healthy world wanted nothing to do with them, and the medical world saw them as too dangerous to not be contained and accounted for. So, under Napoleon, what had started as a rudimentary confinement station became a permanent fixture. The ill were gathered and contained in Poveglia out of fear, but it is because of that fear that nature itself began to change.
I don't understand.
When you have that many strains of disease, each mutating or changing in ways that had never before been seen, confined in such tight, uncontrolled quarters, they begin to breed something entirely new altogether. Medical miracles that could not be explained, reversal of disease, sickness, and in some cases, even death. The disease had become the cure.
Yet you claim that there is indeed experimentation upon the afflicted.
Not under Napoleon, quite the contrary. He wanted nothing to do with Poveglia. When the emperor learned of the changes that were being reported upon the island, he ordered it destroyed, but by then the sickness and mutations alike had escaped the confines of the Church of San Vitale and had spread to undocumented parts of the island.
So the experimentation upon the sick came from...
the German military, mostly during the occupation of World War II.
It always comes back to the Nazis.
During the Italian surrender to the Germans in World War II, the Germans scouted Poveglia for what were initially militaristic purposes. They were hopeful that the Venetian forts built in the early 1600s could be upgraded and utilized in a modern defensive manner. What they found instead was an island that had a much larger, much different population than previously reported. Those who had survived, along with their now exponentially mutated illnesses, possessed immunities unlike the world had ever seen. The Ahnenerbe, or Special Projects Division of the SS, were very excited at this discovery.
Yes, but you have no evidence or findings to back up these claims.
But I do. I did. My research documented countless cases.
Research that you claim the Italian...
My paperwork was never in question before I submitted to the first of my findings. I don't know from where these allegations against my expedition sprang, but everything was in order. I had in my possession actual letters from Napoleon himself condemning the island, using the condemnation of San Vitale as an excuse to destroy what they had found there.
The majority of the scientific community, sir, regards you as a crackpot.
Crackpot? I have the support of many of my peers. The community is behind me. They are simply skeptical of my findings, as they should be.
As you cannot provide, beyond verbal anecdote, any evidence of your claim.
But why would they shut down my studies? They had the evidence. They saw what I was on the verge of bringing to the world.
Dr. Carver, thank you once again for your time. I hope your book, the grimly titled An Island of Death, The History of Poveglia, continues to do well. We found it to be very gripping, although admittedly hard to swallow. After the break, we'll be right back with the cast of British Nannies. Too hot for your tongue. Stay tuned.
Without the internet or much technology to fall back on, our research into Dr. Carver's claims hit a dead end almost immediately. The only thing that we could find was an old encyclopedia entry on the island of Poveglia that confirmed its use as a plague station, and the orders from Napoleon to destroy the Church of San Vital. Still, Dr. Carver's insistence of not just a cure being found on the island, but one born from disease, well, it just hits too close to home for us to ignore. Take it for what you will, but I personally wouldn't discount it. Okay, about 3 weeks after the interview with Dr. Carver aired, ANN began coverage on a Senate hearing in which a senator from New York is accused of taking money from Kurama Pharmaceuticals and refused to explain as to why he was spending so much time in Italy. This is what really cements our suspicion of Kurama's involvement in the outbreak. We cut out most of the official preludes and went directly for the meat of the conversation, which saves you about 4 hours of political droning. Note the mention of DARPA and how the United States government seems to, well, have ties directly to both Italy and Kurama.
You're watching ANN, the American News Network, America's most trusted source for news.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Our top headline of the day continues to focus on the numerous and often bizarre allegations of misconduct that have been brought against Senator Robert Davison of New York. As you may recall, Senator Davison's activities were brought into question during the trials of Joseph Edwards, a former Defense Research employee, now serving a 25-year sentence for his part in what some are now calling the Project Phoebe scandal. We now go live to the Senate hearing still underway.
The committee will be in order. The committee now resumes its hearings on the investigation into the allegations of conflict of occupational interest, obstruction of Congress, and hampering of an investigation by the United States Senate Committee brought against Senator Robert Davison of New York. Senator Davison, am I correct in stating that you have a copy of the list of allegations brought before this committee in front of you now?
That is correct, Madam Chairman.
Senator, if you could, please explain to this committee exactly what your involvement is with the article labeled Project Phoebe.
At this time, I would like to remind the chairwoman, the Madam Chairperson, that I sit on the Senate Committee for Intelligence in an official capacity and that I am not authorized to release sensitive information to the public at this time.
The chair acknowledges your position, Senator Davison, but it still requests that you answer to the best of your ability or to the degree in which you are allowed to speak on the subject. Now, are you stating for the record that you are unable to comment in any fashion on the article entitled Project Phoebe?
That is correct, Madam Chairman.
Senator, how many times have you been to Italy in the last 3 years?
That information is currently classified under Executive Order 13526, and I am not authorized to release it to the public at this time.
Is it true that you've been to Italy over 24 times in the last 3 years, acting in both official and unofficial capacities as in accordance with your current job title?
Again, that information is currently classified under Executive Order 13526, and I am not authorized to release it to the public at this time.
This committee, if you will look at Article 6 on page 3 of the booklet provided, has no record of your official involvement in any activities or articles as sanctioned by the Senate that would require your presence in Italy. Yet we have copies of several reimbursement requisition forms bearing your signature that prove that you were there on numerous occasions. Is that your signature, Senator?
Madam Chairman, that information is also currently classified under Executive Order 13526, and I am not authorized
Senator,
to release
where
it to
or
the
what
public at
is
this
Sturm
time.
and Drang?
I apologize, Madam Chairman, but that information is currently classified under Executive Order 13526, and I am not authorized to release
Senator
it to the public
Davison, your
at this time.
continued impediment of this hearing is duly noted, much to the disappointment of this committee. Perhaps a simpler question: what is your relationship with Kurama Pharmaceuticals?
Like many here, yourself included, Madam Chairman, I have invested in the company's stocks. I make no secret of this.
Indeed. Yet, unlike many here, you have been named as a member of their advisory board. Am I correct in stating this, Senator?
No, Madam Chairman, you are not correct. I have accepted no official titles or duties with Kurama Pharmaceuticals.
Are you saying that you do not sit on the advisory board for Kurama Pharmaceuticals?
I have accepted no official titles or duties within the company, Madam Chairman.
Senator, do you sit on the advisory board for Kurama Pharmaceuticals in any capacity, official or not?
That information is currently classified under Executive Order 13526, 13526, and I am not authorized to
Senator
release it to the
Davison,
public
when was the
at
last
this
time you were in Arlington, Virginia?
I have been present in Arlington several times in the last few years, a number of military memorials, and when I can, I like to take my family to the Bay.
And during these trips, how often did you be located there?
I'm sure once or twice, Madam Chairman.
And what was the nature of these visits?
I believe the agency in which the committee notes was a stop on tour.
DARPA is a secure facility, Senator Davison. Are you saying that you were simply visiting?
No, Madam Chairman, I'm saying that I cannot recall the reason for the visit as it was not noteworthy.
And during these non-noteworthy visits, did you ever come in contact with a Mr. Joseph Allen Edwards?
I do not recall.
So this committee is to understand that you have never had previous contact with Mr. Edwards?
I do not recall, Madam Chairman. As I was never introduced to Mr. Edwards by name, I may have inadvertently seen him without association if he were at the facility.
So you never received anything from Mr. Edwards?
That is correct.
And you never used your station with the United States Senate to facilitate an exchange with Mr. Edwards on behalf of Kurama Pharmaceuticals?
This is correct.
Immediately following one of the several visits to the DARPA facility in which this committee has documented evidence of, you were flown from a private airport to an undisclosed location in Venice. What was the purpose of that trip?
That information is currently classified under Executive Order 13526.
Senator Davison, the committee respectfully insists that you answer the question.
Under Executive Order 13526, that information is listed as classified.
Senator, your reliance on this executive order is...
You have been watching the exclusive live coverage from the Senate hearings involving Senator Robert Davidson of New York. We will have more coverage of this story as it further develops. When we return, video games, they're not just for kids anymore. We'll have an exclusive inside look at what goes on behind the scenes at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3 as it's known to those who attend. That and much more after this.
For those of you who don't remember, Joseph Edwards he was a DARPA employee who dropped a ton of documentation to one of those online anti-government sites before he was taken into custody. He claims to have not only handed over important medical research to Senator Davidson, but that Kurama Pharmaceuticals was working closely with the United States government on a military project. Unfortunately, Mr. Edwards was whisked away, never to be seen again. Shortly after the world as we know it ended. Now, I've been trying to wrap my head around how much actual footage of the outbreak must have been lost from news crews or some random guy with a cell phone who never saw it coming. Could you imagine what YouTube would be like if we could still connect to it? I'm still hopeful I can find more, but I did manage to locate this interview from a TV station in Columbus. I couldn't figure out a way to get it off the playback machine, so I just recorded the audio. You would think that with all the soldiers and police officers that we had in this country, they would have been able to contain something like this.
Have any information, they should contact their local Red Cross. And now we are going live to Dawn, who is downtown where Grace Mercy West Hospital has been evacuated. Dawn, what's happening down there?
Thanks, Mary. We're here behind a series of police barricades with a crowd of employees. We're still a little unclear at what spurned the evacuation, and the police I've spoken with are calling it a biological hazard, which could be anything, I suppose. Our best guess is a chemical spill at this point, but I'm actually here with Carrie Ryan, who was one of the many rushed outside with little explanation. Carrie, you work in the hospital, correct?
That's right. I'm the chief nursing officer in oncology.
And can we safely say today was not a normal day of work?
I think we can, Dawn.
Can you tell us what you saw? Surely something pretty bad must have happened if an evacuation was ordered.
You know, I'm not really sure. I had just started my shift, hadn't even had my coffee yet, and the alarms went off. The other nurses and I assumed it was system testing, but in this day and age, you have to take these things seriously. So we started following protocol and prioritizing patients for evacuation when security came running down the hall and told us to leave them. That was my first indication something was seriously wrong. They rushed us out with everyone else. No one has been allowed back in.
How long ago was that?
Probably an hour now.
Have you seen any of your patients come out yet?
No. but they might have been taken out through the freight elevator on the north end.
Carrie, what do you think happened in there?
I've been hearing weird rumors from some of the orderlies. Word is something happened in the morgue, but nothing ever happens there. I'm pretty sure someone worked too long of a shift and started seeing things. It happens with some of the physicians from time to time. This line of work is high stress, you know.
Has anything like this ever happened before?
Evacuations? Outside of a bomb threat every few years, it's pretty unusual. When there is a major emergency, they usually lock us inside the hospital, not out.
Well, Carrie, thank you for talking with us.
My pleasure. Don? Don, was that gunfire? Can you tell us what's happening?
Mike, are you getting that? No, over there. Mary, some sort of military force seems to have arrived, and we are hearing sounds of what seem to be gunfire inside the hospital. They aren't wearing standard uniforms, so I can't identify which branch we are seeing. They appear to be in full...
Grab 'em. Unit 1.
Gear.
Unit 1, I want these civvies back now. Give me a one-click permitted or I want this AOR sealed. Hobbs, raise the top. Find out where my damn Apaches are. Where the fuck... Had you turn that camera off? I want it off now.
Hey, you can't just...
Cut the feed.
And that's when things started to officially go to hell. Stories like this began popping up like dandelions, and over the next 24 hours, everyone was glued to their televisions and computers. It happened so fast, one hospital turned to 6, which turned to 60, which turned to nothing. Conspiracy nuts will tell you that it was the government turning off some magical switch to the internet, or that the news channels were shut down, but the truth was, nobody was reporting. Uploading a video or setting up a feed, it takes time. And when the levee that was holding the outbreak back finally burst, there was no more time. The next few weeks were a chaotic, blind panic, a frantic attempt at survival. Television was forgot. Hell, technology itself was forgotten. We became the animals that we always told ourselves we were above. And in the end, all that really mattered was survival. I've always been amazed by how quickly mankind can adapt to survive, and how quickly we forget that we're actually adapting. If you can stop what you're doing and take a moment to remember how things used to be and how different things are today. I mean, we were so reliant on technology and medicine. We had pills and tests for everything. It almost seems silly, but when is the last time that you worried about your cholesterol? Or too much MSG on your chicken? God, I can't even remember the last time I had chicken. The reason I bring this up is that while traveling through Illinois, I was chased by a swarm of zombies, and I jacked up my ankle pretty bad making my escape. It was hell to walk on, let alone run. And if it wasn't for blind luck and the kindness of a guy named Charlie, I probably wouldn't be here today. Charlie had been riding cautiously, watching me from a window. But then when he saw that I was struggling, he came. He just ran to me without any hesitation to help. I honestly thought that he was insane when we first met. He had this look about him, unshaven, unkempt, wide-searching eyes, but he also, well, he had painkillers and experience, and these days, the smallest act of kindness from a stranger is pretty rare. And it was obvious that he had seen a lot, and like all of us, it had changed him, but you could also see, feel, really, that he had been an incredibly gifted man at some point. You sure you don't mind if I do this, Charlie? I mean, you've already done so much for me. I feel almost greedy asking for this from you, but it's honestly, it's kind of what I do.
No, son, you just go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Okay, could you please state your name and age for the record?
Dr. Charles Goethe, age 51.
What are you doing out here by yourself? I mean, wouldn't you feel safer in the settlement that I saw just outside of Decatur?
You mean Hope? That's what they call that place now. I make my way there from time to time and check in on folks, help out where I can.
Help out? You were a physician, right? A doctor of some sorts. I mean, from the way that you looked at my foot,
Yeah, well, you could say that. I was the chief resident of emergency medicine at the University Medical Center in Tulsa.
That sounds like a big job. What did you do there?
Well, have you ever been to the emergency room waiting for help when someone else rushed in ahead of you?
Sure.
Well, it was my job to receive them. No cuts and bruises or belly aches, but the emergencies where time was of the essence and someone's life hung in the immediate balance. I was there to assist with every elevated trauma that you could think of. Gunshots, car accidents, severed limbs. Once, I even had to remove a man's genitals. Well, let's just say that's a rather long story.
Wait a minute. If you were in the ER, did you see... did you try to help the people who were infected with this?
I did. Quite a few, actually.
So you actually saw how the virus in its early stages, you saw it how it works. That's amazing. Could you run through what you saw in a typical case?
Well, there was some variation, but typically we'd see a patient come in with multiple puncture wounds to the extremities, their arms or legs mostly, bite marks, mangled fingers.
Puncture wounds and bites.
Look, see, we didn't realize it at the time, but yes, these were the beginnings of the larger attacks. They were exhibiting symptoms of what we were unofficially calling stage 1.
What were the symptoms?
Just complaints of extreme thirst, high fever, headache, chills. If it weren't for the wounds, I would have thought it was an outbreak of avian influenza.
The bird flu? Well, how did you try to treat it?
Well, we started with a standard battery of antibiotics, Suprax and Spectracef, a handful of others. We were anticipating bacterial infections from the wounds, but we eventually deduced that the causation itself was a viral.
Did you ever see someone turn?
Yes, and I can honestly say that I'll never forget the first time that I witnessed it. The patient was Sarah Evans, and she was 34, and she had entered stage 2. At this point, the patient's body would begin to shut down. There was a decrease in breathing, heart rate, and signs of renal failure. Eventually, their hearts would stop altogether, and they could not be resuscitated. It's not like you'd see on televisions. Hospitals actually have a fair chance of bringing people of generally good health back from the brink with defibrillators and proper drug injections. The fact we were now failing 100% of the time would scare the hell out of us. Miss Evans had been in stage 2 for approximately 3 hours before she flatlined. We did what we could, but after 15 minutes of surgery procedure, I had no choice but to call it. There were a lot of sick people who were still alive that needed our help. We were so overwhelmed. But there wasn't time to properly move her body, so we covered her with the sheet and moved on to the next emergency. A few hours later, I was running by, and out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw the sheet move. I was exhausted, so at first I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but as I was standing there, it happened again. There was definite movement.
She had reanimated.
I was both elated and horrified. I thought we had made a horrible mistake, that in our haste had missed a weak pulse or that the EKG had malfunctioned. I pulled the sheet that she was struggling with from her face and asked her if she knew her name or where she was.
Were you able to communicate with her?
She gurgled a low moan as if she were in pain. A low, almost instinctual function of the adrenal medulla. Before I had a chance to check her retinal responses, she jerked into a sitting position and grabbed me quite forcibly by the throat. Her mouth was agape and she was gnashing her teeth. Given how recent her cardiac arrest had been, I was more than a bit taken aback by the level of necrosis that she was exhibiting.
A person had come back to life and was trying to eat you, and that's what surprised you?
Well, yes. A nearby orderly noticed our struggles, and together we managed to subdue Miss Evans and strapped her down. We put her in isolation, but I never had another chance to follow up with her. If I had had more time to examine her and treat her, maybe I could have helped.
So it's safe to say that stage 3 is reanimation?
Very astute. As medically unlikely as it sounds, this virus has the undeniable ability to somehow reanimate a very small portion of a clinically dead patient's brain. Because of the limited scope of brain functionality, there is no memory, reasoning, or sense of self-preservation beyond basic mobility. They lack even the most rudimentary problem-solving skills or complex motor functions.
But they still need to eat.
Well, no. While they do possess an almost primal need to eat, I suspect that it is either an unintentional reaction from the resurrection process, or more likely, a way for the virus to propagate itself and spread. They may eat, But they derive no sustenance from what they consume. Because of this, we have no way to accurately estimate the life cycle of the new organism, or zombie, if you will.
So you're saying that they could be here a while?
Oh, as they appear to repel not only natural scavengers, but bacteria and insect populations that normally break down a corpse. I would place a sizable wager on this being a long-term conundrum.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Now, let's take another look at that angle.
After he was certain that I'd be all right, Charlie gave me a small bottle of pills for my pain, and we went our separate ways. I had more interviews to find, and he said that he had taken an oath to help, and that's what he was going to do. I haven't seen him since, but his story never fails to remind of just how tragic all of this really was. So if you hear about a scraggly doctor wandering the countryside and handing out pills like a bearded Pez dispenser, tell him Double D says hello. And thank you. And if you happen to hear that he didn't make it or stumble upon something worse, keep that shit to yourself. I couldn't take it. If you've ever been out there alone, you've probably learned that traveling has changed quite a bit since the outbreak. Most of the roads are impassable, and you spend more time ducking the undead or scouting out the living than you do actually chalking up the miles. Well, there's a bunch of people out there putting more miles in one day than most of us could in a week. I call them the Caravan. Because while they didn't have an official name for their group, that's essentially what they were. A group of mobile survivors following this monster big rig slowly down the highway. Equipped with a cattle catcher from an old train and a solid, well, it had solid, albeit mostly bald, tires. The lead truck cleared the roads of cars and zombies with equal ease, while the follow-up vehicles put down anything that was too close for good. Now, I was lucky enough to not only stumble across them and trade a few things, but to ride with them for a few days and get to know them a little bit. Now, the lead driver, the owner of the Monster Express, as he called it, was a surprisingly happy, easygoing guy named Hayshaker, who agreed to an interview as he drove because, as I learned, the Caravan never stops for long.
You okay over there?
Yeah, thanks. I just, it's bigger than here than I would have thought.
Oh, this is my baby. Custom sleeper, 191 inches. Hell, I even got a microwave back there.
She's beautiful.
Oh, no, not like she used to be, but hey, I don't have to pay on her anymore, right?
Well, thank you for doing this. I know that you're busy.
Oh, driving slow like this, sleeping most of the time, only wake up for the turns.
Are you ready to get started?
Sure. What do we do?
Okay, just answer any questions that you want to answer.
That it?
That's it.
All right, shoot.
Please state your name and age for the record.
I'm 44, yes. The name's Donald Michael Fredericks Jr., but if you got your ears on him, Hayshaker.
Hayshaker?
Well, technically, I'm Hayshaker Jr. My daddy was Hayshaker. But since he's passing all, I leave the junior part out. He got the name because back in the day he used to drive a big old hay wagon and he made it shake every night he could. He'd come on back.
So, Hayshaker, where were you when all of this started?
Oh, you mean this zombie stuff?
Yeah.
Hey, funny story. Actually, I nearly slept through it.
You nearly slept through it?
Yep. See, when all of this really started, I was back there.
In your bed?
Yep. And the sleeper had me one of those stomach bugs. Not like the sickness folks get now right before they turn. But it was pretty bad. Don't know if it was a cold or just bad meal, but I had a case of the shit, something fierce. Can I say the shit?
Yeah, although I might have to bleep it out when I play it for my church group.
Oh, okay, I'll try not to say it. Anyways, I was laid up for like 2 days, stomach cramps and the shit, making a whole bunch. Finally, I just fell asleep in the bunk and prayed for death. Oh, I guess I should joke about that.
You're fine, go on.
Well, I had to squawk box off because folks get ratchet on, and the last thing you want to hear when you're holding your pooper shut and fighting off cramps is a bunch of idiots hollering at you, so I had no real idea what was going on outside my own truck. And a while later, I'm feeling better, sipping water from the fridge and thinking about getting up when someone starts pounding on my door, making a real racket of it too, and I figured it was just one of them lot lizards, trying to get in, so I got up to chase her off. I don't play with lot lizards. I mean, I ain't no good buddy or nothing. I just don't fiddle with them. Your church folk should know that.